Pharmaceutical companies are fighting fraud across the nation, perpetuated by criminals who tamper with life-saving prescription drugs. So who's in on it? Patients, pharmacies, and wholesale distributors. In just one sophisticated scheme, hundreds of millions of dollars were stolen to siphon off profits from Big Pharma and stick taxpayers with the bill. Here's Contessa Brewer with a CNBC investigation, Fraud in a Bottle. Contessa.
At the casino cage, wads of cash in hand. The security camera captures a real player, a larger-than-life gambler. With posts from luxury boats and private planes, Lázaro Hernandez fashioned himself as a high-flying high roller. Turns out he was the mastermind of a $230 million drug counterfeiting operation. These thousands of bottles were all originally prescribed and filled for patients. Now they fill an evidence room at Gilead Sciences in Northern California. Every single bottle was discovered in a complex criminal drug diversion scheme.
We are playing a bit of a game of whack-a-mole.
Lori Mayall fights to find the counterfeits every day. She oversees global product security at Gilead, which manufactures HIV medications, Biktarvy and Descovy, drugs at the center of Hernandez's fraud.
We know that upward to 80,000 of bottles of counterfeits were entered into the supply chain.
And what would those be worth if someone was paying full retail price?
Those bottles would be about $230 million.
Here's how drug diversion works. A patient fills a prescription for a medication worth several $1,000s, but turns around and sells it for a fraction of that in cash. The buyer, known as an aggregator, removes the patient information, alters the bottle, then sells it to a wholesale distributor, who sells it back to the pharmacy at a discount. So the same bottle re-enters the supply chain. This bottle doesn't even contain pills, just rocks.
All they need to do is make the sale, and that's what they care about.
And this man, let's call him Julio, who agreed to an interview if we concealed his identity, said it was easy to persuade patients to sell their bottles.
They have AIDS, cancer, and they don't have any money. So for $100, $200, they'll sell it every day.
So they'll forego the medication. They won't take the medication.
They won't take the medication.
The fraud achieves size and national scale because licensed distributors buy from aggregators like Julio, sell to the pharmacies, and give the whole process the sheen of legitimacy.
They're a critical cog in the scheme.
And the distributors have relationships with thousands of independent pharmacies across the nation. Stephen Mahmoud is Assistant Special Agent in Charge at Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General.
The pharmacies that are on the receiving end of these diverted prescriptions, do they know?
Some do, some don't. Medicare pays out to pharmacies a lot of money for these drugs because they are expensive and life-sustaining.
This hidden camera video has never been seen in public. Shot by an undercover informant, it shows a woman, her husband and son, cleaning prescription pill bottles in a South Florida apartment.
The individual in the white shirt in the middle, you can see the what appears to be lighter fluid. He's using that lighter fluid, a harsh chemical, to clean the bottle and remove the pharmacy prescription label.
Gilead Sciences and Johnson & Johnson have sued distributors and pharmacies throughout the country. Their investigations and litigation are still unfolding. These three were convicted in connection with a prescription drug counterfeiting operation. Lázaro Hernandez's jet-setting days ended abruptly this year. He was convicted in that $230 million drug counterfeiting operation. He pled guilty to conspiracy charges related to distributing adulterated and misbranded drugs and money laundering. He is serving a 15-year prison sentence.
And you know who's largely escaped any kind of responsibility? The wholesale distributors. None have been criminally charged, though the CEO of Scripps Wholesale, based in Brooklyn, was indicted in June for buying more than $150 million of prescription HIV medication, which had been illegally diverted. Prosecutors say he then resold it to pharmacies. He has pled not guilty, and his attorney declined to comment to CNBC.
So, Contessa, why have those critical cogs that you cite escaped blame, at least in criminal terms?
Well, we know that there are investigations ongoing into these wholesale distributors, that Gilead and Johnson & Johnson are pursuing civil litigation against them. But federal authorities and the pharmaceutical companies say, look, the fact that these distributors are licensed to sell other kinds of medications, they do it legally, it muddies the water, makes it more difficult.
That's insane. I'm just thinking from the consumer perspective on this. How do I know that my medication is real if I'm getting it from somewhere? And by the way, is this a problem only with the independent pharmacies? Is this a problem that pops up with the CVSs of the world and the Walgreens? How do you track this down?
I asked that very question because I thought, well, CVS and Walgreens and Rite Aid and Target and Walmart, no, they have their own relationships with the pharmaceutical companies and other distributors that are doing this. So this is mostly an issue for independent pharmacies.
Right.
And they actually found out that the reason why Gilead got onto this is that they got reports that bottles that thought that were supposed to contain HIV medication contain Seroquel, which is used to treat mental health problems. And so there were bad reactions. People ended up in the hospital. But they said, if you're buying, it is insane. Right. If you're buying from a pharmacy, maybe the best thing to do is double check those actual pills. You know, they say on there, the code.
Right.
Did I really get, and that also prevents.
Contessa, that was what I was going to ask. Is how much of it is, you know, sometimes like a fake watch really looks like a real watch. How evident is it in terms of just how good the labeling everything is and how can people tell?
Well, in some cases, what happens is you'll get the patient information and it'll be all torn up or misprinted or misspellings, and then it's a clear warning sign that this was not a legitimate drug. But for instance, Ozempic now is a big target for counterfeiters. They're actually trying to come up with drugs that seem like Ozempic, or they're using other things. They have found that in more than a dozen countries, counterfeiters are trying to make money. And where can they make money? The HIV drugs, the cancer drugs, and now weight loss drugs are a huge target for counterfeiters. So, yeah, buyer beware.
Look, I hate the idea that it's targeting independent pharmacies, because I love some of the independent pharmacies that I've used too. But this is a serious, serious issue.
One thing that was pointed out to me by both the federal investigators and the pharmaceutical companies is that there are no deals to be had on HIV medication. You're not going to get it for 5% off or 10% off. So pharmacies that are willing to buy discounted drugs, there's a higher likelihood that there's a problem with those drugs, that somehow they're not entering the system in a mainstream.
How do I know that as a consumer?
It's about double checking and knowing your pharmacy.